All right. We're gonna be able to finally make our house and assemble all of the pieces that we made, tilers and meshes and everything, and finally build it. So it is exciting to see, as you can see, some of the progress, and I feel proud of how much it changed from the original concept. And remember when I first made the first sketch, everything was just very loose. I had some ideas, and thanks to my references, I was able to adjust accordingly. And so, yeah, we started with our block out and very simple polygonal shapes, and then I started adding what I thought it was going to be the tilers that were going to make the house. And even though I had some ideas, everything was just so vague. And I had, since it's my own personal project, I basically made all the decisions as I went. And as you can see here, here's where I'm building the scene. Here is first where I have to make sure that all the parts fit on the grid correctly and make my modular sets, um, build from all of my trim sheets and uh, textures, build separate pieces, and then bring it all into Unreal. And of course, as I went along, I was doing a few paint overs for the scene, making sure that it reads, or making sure that I add a few extra pieces here and there. And that's why sketching is so important, at least for me, is because I can just flesh out all of those ideas as I go. And it's just so easy. You just take a screenshot and then in Photoshop you can just paint. All right, so here I have the finished modular pieces of the house. And this part of making is similar, like the way that I did it before in the first part. It's just with more finished pieces, and you just gotta make sure that everything tiles correctly because you are dealing with a lot more polygons on each of the modules. And then just bring it into Unreal and start assembling our scene together. Okay, let's talk about levels. So as you can see, this is considered one level. Um, as if we go to level, you can save this as a level. Now let's open our levels tab, and here you have what's called the persistent level, which is basically all the time on. If I turn on and off, you will see disappearing all of my stuff. So the cool thing is that you can have multiple sub levels. Like for example, I made a sub level for a different type of lighting scenario. One is overcast, one is sunset, and so levels allow us to organize different settings or things that we want to add to that level, which is very handy. So let's create a new level, and we are going to open and add this level or existing level. And as you can see, I have multiple levels, and this allows me to iterate multiple versions of this working level, so I can test stuff without disrupting my main one. So let's add our level, and here it is. So what I want to do is um, add to my levels. So if I highlight this, it doesn't do anything until I tell it make current. So if I go here, I can add pieces until I make current. So make sure that you always have this in mind. You don't want to add objects to the wrong level, and you might have to redo some work. So let's add a cube to test, and we're going to add it to the test level. So let's open our levels tab and let's check that it works. And if I turn it off, yes, it works. Great. So if let's say, for example, I made a mistake and I want it in the persistent level, I can just go to move to the level that I want to and say move selected object to level. And now it goes with the object goes to the actual level. So it's not all, it's, your work is not lost. It's just you might have to track the pieces that you need. All right, so let's work on building the house itself. So I am modeling on the grid every 50 units, and I'm just building the foundation wall, and we're going to add our floor. And since I'm just going to model the outside, I don't care about the interior. So in the first design, I had it. The base, the foundation was just a straight wall. But I felt like it would look cooler if I was making it on a slanted instead. So I went back and adjusted the wall. And now I am using either my perspective to move things around or go into our our top view and and model the stuff. So one of the ideas that I thought maybe would be cool if instead of being flat, it could have ins and outs the design. So right now I made the house smaller so it can accommodate for a sort of like a corridor. That way it makes the design a little bit more interesting, as well as maybe have windows that are not all flat, but also they have a little bit of an angle, like you see. Gives a little bit more, I don't know, interest that they stand out a little bit more. Again, everything fits on the grid, which is the cool part. It makes things so much easier when building stuff. And as you can see, I've been doing everything on a gray mesh. I don't know why, but I find it less distracting when you have textures. Especially at this point, I had only a few pieces texture, and so being able to just concentrate without all the horrible textures or the unfinished building, it just gives me a little bit of anxiety or reduces the anxiety of seeing something not complete. So I like just go and do everything without textures. That way I concentrate just in shapes and light. Yeah, now from now on is just trying to build these pieces. Like I said previously, I had this built in Maya, and I tested it everything. And when I was done, I brought it back into or rebuild it here with more, making sure that everything fits on the grid. So I'm just gonna speed up the process and uh, finalize the design. Yeah, and the roof, for example, I kind of assemble multiple of my tilers and then deform it in Maya. I feel like it was a good idea just to bring all of it inside, it's like one chunk, and then replicate it 5 times. Then I made a dormer just to give it a little bit more interest at the top. I made this cool piece for the front, and then I added this decorative piece for the rails. Cool. Now let's test it. Let's start playing and cool. Yep. Yeah, definitely. I like it. All right, let's talk about prefabs. Well, prefabs are basically a good way to speed up your process. As you can see here, I have a bunch of pieces that I put together, and if I make this set and I want to replicate it everywhere as a group, it will pretty much. If I need to change something, I would not be able to do it because that group is unique. And if I copy that group to 20 or 30 times, I will have to redo every single group. So there's another way, and it's using blueprints. So let's go and make a blueprint, and then blueprint class, actor. Okay, and let's double click that. And you can see if you go to viewport, our set is empty so far because we need to drag pieces into it. So let's bring in one by one. We're going to drag it at the top where it says thermal pool set. I will drag it there. Every single piece that we bring in, we're going to drag it at the top. Do not drag it another one into the Teros pool or there. It has to be at the top. So see what happens there is that I selected the lower one and it went straight to as a child of the original. So let's start making our pieces, assembling them. And I will just play around with the location so it doesn't look very pretty much the same. Just move around. And once I'm done, save it, compile, and let's look at our prefab. So here is our group, and we're gonna drag our prefab into our scene. And as you can see, we can. This prefab is the same as having any other mesh. We can duplicate it the same way in that regard. I'm gonna start populating this thing pretty easy. And so we can keep adding to this prefab as much as we want to, and it will propagate instantly. And the cool thing is that you can actually go into each of the prefabs and select the piece that you want to move. If you didn't like one prefab, you can just go into the blueprint and select that piece and just move it around. So you're not locked into the one prefab. You still have that flexibility of adjusting it. Of course, it's better to have one prefab, two or multiple prefabs, and then just one. That way you can set dress it really nice. All right, so I'm still figuring this thing out. Maybe I can move around things so it doesn't look too repetitive. We're almost there, and yeah, I mean there were several pieces in the house that were prefabs. Of course, let's don't abuse the blueprints because it costs in a game performance. Don't try to make like, for example, a wall, an entire wall out of small single pieces. It's better to uh, assemble them in Maya and then maybe add if you want to make a prefab, adding a few more pieces that you already have inside of the engine. Go ahead. Okay, let's run. It works. It looks good. All right, let's get rid of everything and start building our landscape. So we go to landscape mode. Let's create and start. Make sure it's at 0. Go to landscape sculpt, and we're gonna just sculpt here and there. And so there were some mountains surrounding the house. Feel like I didn't thought very much when I made this where the door was going to be. So because in the sketch it looked like the door was away from the geysers. But I guess I will figure out as I go. That's my motto of life. So I'm gonna have I'm gonna have two viewports, one for you, one for me, so I can work. You will see me just moving around on a static camera. Adding a few mountains there. Right, maybe it will be a good idea if we start thinking about the door. So let's go and pretty much for the door I usually use flatten, and let's add a ramp. So we want the ramp to be as flat as possible. So go ahead and bring it down to the base of our foundation, extending all the way to the entry. So there will be like a little corridor or way in to the house. So for landscapes, especially this kind of landscape that we're talking about, it's not as open world as other ones. Like if I was doing a more open world game, I would probably make this inside of one of those world machine generators, terrain generators. But I think for this one, since it's a very small scene, I'm just gonna sketch out everything here. Okay, so for this part, we are done. I'll see you in the next one where we actually build the landscape terrain.